This is the Troutbitten podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout.
Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten podcast. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swintoski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of troutbitten.com. All right, then here we are at the conclusion of our streamer presentation series. And let's call it Volume 1 because I think we could
Nice.
I think we could easily do another 10 episodes on streamer presentations and still have plenty more to cover. The point is there's a whole world out there to discover when it comes to streamers. There are many kinds of baitfish. They all move in different ways, and they have habits that we can imitate. And because they're a big enough creature with the ability to move, cross currents, scurry off downstream, or make their way across the whole river, what we might do with a streamer and make it look alive, and then familiar to the trout, is a big, complex set of motions. And that's so much different than presenting nymphs or dry flies, which we're mostly trying to dead drift with maybe some occasional animation. So I'm a firm believer in the ability to sell these larger food forms of streamers to the trout. And I think the general unwillingness to tackle all the ways that a baitfish can move and how we might imitate those movements precisely has held anglers back for a long time. For sure, the last 2 or 3 decades, though, along with the ease of sharing information online, has helped move the bar. But there's a lot more to discover. And as I said in an earlier episode of this series, I know I'm leaving a lot on the table with my streamer game every time I leave the river.
Right on.
You know?
Yeah.
I just know that more is possible. And I believe it all starts with these presentations. Like, how can we move the streamer? And then how do we want to move the streamer for the next river scenario? So tonight, Austin and I want to tie up some loose ends and hit on a few topics that we just didn't cover elsewhere, or maybe we didn't cover them fully enough. Thanks again to all of your questions coming in. Kind of helped steer the series a little bit and cover, yes, lines, leaders, and flies a little more than we planned. But you get it. Like, this has been about how do we want to move the streamer, because that's where it starts. And then you can give them your own names, you're going to come up with your own presentations, how you can kind of combine these motions, and you come up with how you want to move the streamer for that moment. So this episode then is kind of a grab bag of tactics and tips for streamers. And I think along the way, you'll hear us relate a lot of these tips to some of those different river scenarios that you're going to encounter. So my buddy Austin Dando is here with me. Austin, good to see you.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you.
Right on. Let me ask you this. What's new in your streamer game, or what are you working on these days? Whether it's flies, rigs, tactics, what has you excited? I've talked a lot about what I've been working on. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, since you've been making fun of me for not liking to see my streamer,
Yeah.
I've been trying to think about that a little more and give it a chance. So either fishing a brighter colored streamer, or fishing more towards the surface, or paying attention closer to actually locate the fly and follow it through the retrieve. I've been trying to get a little more comfortable with that.
That's neat. What I learned from you, really, and even the last time we were out, is just not move it so much. I learned the same thing from Delhi.
Yeah.
And do you talk to yourself when you're on the water? Out loud, I mean.
Not much. I'm always thinking, though.
Yeah, I know. I hope we're all thinking. But no, I've been doing that a lot.
Talking to yourself?
Mm-hmm. I always
Most
have.
intelligent conversation you'll have all day, right?
One smart guy to another.
Yeah. Man, that guy's smart.
One dumb guy to another. Get myself all confused. I'm like, no, you said you were going to just do the crossover coming down there. What are you doing? I told you last week that I had, right before we recorded that podcast last week, I was like, I'm going to go fishing. I had like an hour before it got dark, and I went out, and I swear to God, I said to myself out loud, all right, I'm doing one thing. Not changing rigs. I might change flies. That's it. We're not changing rigs. Well,
yeah. How did that go?
I changed.
How long?
How long what?
Like, how long did you last before you said, I'm making?
About 20 minutes. And it wasn't just a fly. I changed my tippet section. I started nymphing. because it was just such a good spot. And I caught one on a nymph.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the streamer. And then I went tightline dry dropper because they had been rising, the day before to olives and stuff. Anyway, that's it's hard for me to stay on one thing for very long.
You have to leave the rest of it at home.
That's the way. It's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Discipline and like even what you take on the river.
Right.
But I could just run back to the truck. I really want to change. Hey, let's do a question. Last listener question of season 14. Let me briefly say we'll be back next season. It'll probably be about 2 or 3 weeks. Not quite as long of a layover as we usually have. We want to get going, bring the whole crew back. Matt, Trevor, Josh, Deli, Austin will be here, and I guess I'll show up too. We'll talk about not just streamers. All kinds of stuff. Looking
full
forward.
Format.
I know. Looking forward to the full format. Hey, question though. You want to do it, bud?
Yeah. All right. So we got a question here from Henry Ameston on Instagram. He writes, "Hey Dom, I heard you talk about being bored by jigging small streamers a little while back.
Mm-hmm.
But in your podcast on crossover fishing, it sounds like you're jigging small streamers.
Fair.
What's the difference?"
Yeah. And I'll just answer this directly. And I thought about that when we had the jigging episode, and I actually wanted to mention it. But just simply jigging streamers kind of under your rod tip and having only one thing that you're doing, just jigging them up and letting them down, jigging them up, letting them down.
Yeah.
Is kind of boring to me. What we talked about, would it be now 2 weeks ago in the crossover technique is really quite different. And even when we talked about the jigging episode, that to me is pretty different, because even when I think about just jigging streamers, and that's all I'm going to do. Now I'm going to jig. Well, I can jig it up and then be in contact on the way down. So that's a contact jig. And then I can jig it up and do what we called slack jigging. We can do pendulum jigging, right? And then what I usually do is put a lane change in there, But yeah, the comment from me does hold. I am bored by just jigging streamers. I like to do more with it because I like to sell it.
Nice.
And I suppose, especially if it's just right under my rod tip and I'm just kind of dangling it and jigging it in one spot, for me, I feel like there are not only more exciting presentations, but perhaps more effective presentations. And I fully admit that I might be wrong about that. Yeah. What do you think, Austin? You have any comment on that?
I think you hit it right on. It's the fact that there's more involved and a little more active involvement, again, within that retrieve than just jigging. Jigging itself is, what it's called, up and down throughout the drift. And we're talking about the crossover. You have the ability to mix in different animations within. There could be a jig in there as well, of course. Yeah, it's just a little bit more diversified.
Yeah, that's very true. So, topic, bud. Let's do it. So let's get into the meat of it, Austin. Let's just bring up some things that we should solidify. I don't know, random ideas that you had about streamers that don't really fit into one of these other episodes. You got a place you want to start? Let it fly.
I was thinking about something the other day when I was out, and we talked some about fly choice and fly design, somewhat. But, we've kind of avoided the more finer details.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, colors and flash or no flash, rubber legs, like the actual design of what the flies are, I was starting to think a little bit more. I was fishing in the water, was starting to get turbid on me. And I started to wonder, I was doing a crossover technique, and then I started to do more of a tight line dance and bring it up towards the surface and get an idea of what my fly was doing. All right, because I'm trying to work on that. But then I realized, my fly isn't really showing up too much anymore because the water's getting a little dirty. And then I went to a bigger fly to try to maybe find it easier and give the chance of the fish a chance to find it easier. And that didn't seem to work. And then I was trying to manipulate a little bit with the amount of flash I would choose for a fly to maybe help me locate it versus like a dark fly to be a greater contrast than the water itself.
Yeah.
But I don't really love fishing flashy flies in dirty water either. So it's kind of like a bit of a catch-22. How much do you think about fly color and design when looking at the water around you, just practically speaking?
Well, I think of shade, whether it's dark or light, and then I just think of flash, whether it's real flashy or not.
Yeah.
I'm pretty general about it. I'm not a big believer in cream being much different than tan, let's say. I'm not a real big believer in even olive being all that different than brown or even black. And that comes with some experience, meaning I've done it a lot, meaning I was like, I'm just going to rotate colors.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I used to rotate. I'd take the same pattern. I'd only take 2 patterns on a river, and I'd just rotate colors all day.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Gallup thing, white to black to tan to olive to yellow to something else.
Yeah.
And then cycle it again. I think flash matters a lot more many times. Flash is a big deal.
Yeah.
Really not flashy flies are a very different thing down there than, I don't know, something like a Crelex, which is all flash.
Yeah, all
just,
flash.
Catching every little bit of light that it can and distributing it,
I think about that a lot too.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of these bait fish, when you see them move over to their sides or something, or the light catches them just right when you're observing them from above the water.
Yeah.
Like they're super shiny. And if the light is catching their scales right and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So acrylics, like I get why that works for many reasons. But myself, I find my own inclination for streamers is like the less amount of flash, the better. It sort of psychs me out when I've got something too flashy.
Are you serious? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very adverse to the flash.
I have a hard time not having any flash in there.
The bead, right? I got a bead. That counts.
Okay.
Yeah. Flash,
that's a really good point. Yeah.
Not a lot more.
It took me a while to get on to Gunnar Brammer's pheasant bugger. We've talked about that a couple times in the season.
Yeah.
And there's no flash in it. There's no, there's no crystal flash. There's no flash aboo. There's no ice dub. It's just all natural pheasant feathers of different types stacked onto a hook, pushed onto a hook, wound onto a hook. And then there can be a bright flashy bead, or I was tying it with just a black bead.
Yeah.
It took me a while,
yeah.
But now it's one of my favorite flies. I think a lot about that. Yeah, the flash. It sounds like I have more confidence in flash than you do. And boy, I guess it's like so many other things. I'm not a one-trick pony kind of angler. And I got them all in my box. I'm there with, Gunnar's pheasant bugger with, with a coffee-colored bead.
Yeah.
And then I have the Crelex, which is all flash. And I suppose those are kind of the two extremes. In most of my flies, I have at least a little bit of flash. My bunny bullet has a little bit of black.
Right. I dig that.
Crystal flash.
Yep.
And that's just enough. And
so the half and full pints, do you count the cone as the flash for that fly?
Yeah. And you make a good point. The half pint and full pint, they have no flash except for the peacock curl. And it's hard to actually call it flash. But that, I think, is like natural flash. It's the original flash, man, if you think about it. Peacock curl.
Yeah, that's true.
Is the only...
Yep.
I think if you take all the natural materials, it's probably the most reflective. Thanks for that word. Versus once you bring in synthetics, the door's open for flashy stuff. But is there another natural material that's more flashy than peacock curl?
Yeah.
You might not think of one either. There might be one,
for a while.
But I can't. Not a common one anyway, right?
Exactly. One that's not maybe as readily available.
Anyway.
Yeah. Nice.
We're going to go on and on. Let's talk about something besides flies for a second.
All right. What do you got?
Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer.
The landscape is changing for trout anglers. No doubt you've already noticed another truck at your favorite access point and seen more anglers on the water. For those looking for new challenges and fishing opportunities, Trout Routes has the data to help you avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Trout Routes has mapped more than 50,000 trout streams across the country with curated, detailed maps of public land and access points. Trout Routes has developed integrated and interactive data, putting the tools in your hands to research new water and help you navigate in the wild to know exactly where you stand in the current. It's still up to you to find those deep pools and undercuts, but Trout Routes helps you get on the water, connecting you with resources like fly shops and stream gauges for trout water across the country. Download Trout Routes in the App Store today. Then use the code Troutbitten for 20% off your membership at maps.troutroutes.com. My question is, what fools more trout? Is it erratic or predictable motions? We've been talking a lot about animations. How do we want to move the streamer? Whether it could be quick or smooth and fast or slow. And I'm asking, do we want any of those animations to be almost random? Or should they be following a pattern, like jig up, jig down, up and down? Should we jerk and then strip, and jerk and strip? Should we go jerk, jerk, head flip, boop, 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 boop?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
You get it.
It's neither of
That's not a good answer.
it's not one or the other.
That's not a
I
good
can tell
answer.
you I can tell you what I do more
Yeah.
of, which is the subtle stuff and more predictable stuff.
I know, and I'm the opposite.
I know. So the way I think about that is, again, I go back to the trout's perspective. And if I'm a trout lying in wait, and I'm trying to plan how I'm going to attack this thing, and it's doing something that, like, I don't know where to go or which motion or where it's going to go next, like, I would have a very low confidence in my approach. Where if I am seeing something that has a relatively predictable movement, maybe there's variations within that, but I kind of have a decent idea. Yeah, it's going down this lane. It's mostly staying within these couple of inches, even though it's moving this or that. That to me seems like a pretty good bet. So that's what my mind thinks about when I'm retrieving streamers often, is a little bit of predictability mixed in with something in it to keep it natural enough looking, maybe.
I think that's fair. I think mostly along the same lines as you do. I think if you really want to seal the deal, a more patterned approach, a more predictable approach. I like to put a lot of animations in there, but then I like to keep them fairly predictable. Again, like a rhythm to the jerk, strip, or jig up and down, or just slide and twitch, slide, slide. They, meaning the trout, kind of know where it's going to come. Again, your presentation needs to be long enough for anything to be predictable or random, right? That's why I do like to cast further away with my streamers than with nymphs, for example.
Yeah.
So you get the chance to show these trout like, hey, this is moving, but then it's also predictable. That said, I really love to just put in some weird stuff. One of the last namers
Keeps the
I
day
caught.
interesting.
Yeah. One of the last namers two namers ago would have been like
Oh,
5
you're bragging.
5 years. No,
I can't even remember how many namers ago it was.
I'm telling you, it was 5 years ago when I caught this trout. And there's only one namer that I caught since.
Yeah.
But I caught him on a very random kind of approach. But then it was followed by something that was perhaps predictable. My point is, I like to get the trout. I think I'm getting the trout's attention with something like very almost scattered or random, like head flip and pop, flip it back, and then jig it up, and then just let it fall, twitch, fall, twitch, and then they hit, right? And that's kind of what I distinctly remember what was happening when I caught that namer that I'm talking about. Named it Honey
What
Bunny.
was the fish's?
Honey
Yeah,
Bunny.
man. I was going to ask you if that was Honey Bunny, but
Yeah, it
you know,
was.
that's
It was a
more
while
than
ago.
5 years ago now.
I think so.
It's probably closer to 10 years ago.
Skinny trout. It was spawned out. It was like in January, and it was going back.
26, wasn't it?
No, it's 25 and a half. So
Yeah,
if
big
you want to
fish.
call it 26, I'm happy with that.
I bet you'd be okay with that.
Nah.
Little integrity.
Oh, honestly, it was spawned out and it's coming back to, not a very pretty fish.
Yeah,
I think
kinda
it was
pale.
going back downstream, just relocating, kind of pale, pretty thin. It was a female. Anyway, let's talk about fish. Really, I know what I was doing, and I called it Honey Bunny because I was using a bunny bullet. And,
Yeah, it's a good name.
And the movie Pulp Fiction.
Nice.
It was random, and then predictable. And my belief is that I attracted the fish with something like, hey, what the heck's going on over there? And then they maybe go over to inspect it, or on their way to inspect it. They're looking at it like, all right, that's what you're doing. Here's my moment to eat it.
Yeah.
I like to think that's what's going on. And honestly, from a boat, I feel like I've seen that enough. Like, do something random for a second
Yeah.
or two, and then make it predictable. Make it easier for the trout to pattern what's going on.
That might be something interesting to hit on too, is when we're in the boat
Yeah.
often because of the angle and maybe the depth we're fishing at. We do have more of a chance to see the fish's drive-bys or strikes or whatever it may be.
Oh, yeah.
And it is shocking. We talk about how far will a trout move for a fly, and when we talk about streamers specifically, it's amazing how far sometimes they'll move. And I've seen them run halfway across the river after a streamer, and they're still chasing it, still chasing it, still chasing it. This is insane. This is insane. All of a sudden, wham!
Yeah.
They don't do that's not like common. But that stuff happens. And if you were standing 4 feet, 3 feet lower in the water, stripping it back, you probably wouldn't have seen any of it. But you'd just be guessing, well, maybe I passed by a rock in the middle of the river and all of a sudden there's a fish there. You just never know.
No. Yeah, when you're standing on top of the water, you see everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. Trevor and I floated not too long ago, and he pointed out that like the further they move, the more they travel, the less likely it is that they'll actually commit. You know what I mean? If a fish eats, it's usually because he only moved a foot or 2 or 3 for it. I'm talking about a streamer.
Yeah.
Fly goes in, and you're stripping or jigging or slow sliding, and bam, they eat it. And it didn't come that far off the bank. But if they do travel halfway across the river for it, you're going to be really lucky if he actually commits. If he's following and following and following, basically my thought is he has all of that time to go, that's not real, that's not real.
Sure.
And I think they just say like, I'm not eating it. I've seen it long enough. I'm not eating that.
I wonder on the opposite for the sake of conversation. Like if they're going to travel halfway across the creek or whatever, that's an extreme. But if they're going to those lengths and let's say they're not, let's say they're curious.
Yeah. I got to get something out of this.
Right? Like I've used way too much energy to not get food.
Yeah.
So I got to get it.
Yeah. Maybe.
If they're not totally turned off by the fly or whatever it may be, it's not the angler's fault. If they're just like, yep, that's food, I better get something to show for it.
And again, we've certainly seen that from a boat on foot. You've seen him, and we all have the story. He chased like 10 feet. He chased like 15 feet, and he finally ate it right before I had no room to maneuver.
At my feet. Yeah. Couldn't set the hook.
We know. I mean, it happens.
Yep. Yeah. So that's what makes you retrieve flies confidently throughout the drift.
Okay.
Again, we can get, when days are slow, like they often may be streamer fishing, we get sloppy because we start to pass time and maybe doing similar stuff. And then we kind of get out of it, not in the cleanest headspace.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one blows up at your feet when you weren't paying attention, or you're just dragging your fly behind you and whatever. And all of a sudden there's a fish on it. You have to be tuned in to the best that you can through the day to really sell the fly, right? We talked about the salesmanship earlier. Sell that fly the whole time you're out there. Fish hard.
Yeah. That's hard to do because you have to cover a lot of water with streamers.
Yeah.
Again, assuming we're on foot. And it takes energy, physical. It takes energy, mental, is what you're saying, to really keep yourself in the game. And if you are going to do something specific, like the crossover, that's hard to keep it within that basketball like we were talking about. And if you're going to decide that you're going to hit the bank and then slow slide off of it to give the fly the most chance to be there, and you decide, I'm going to commit to doing this for 15 minutes, it does. It takes me anyway, some mental energy to discipline myself not to do other stuff. Not that it's wrong to do other stuff, but whatever you're going to do, I'm suggesting, I think you and I are both suggesting, to have a plan, pick one of these presentations or a bunch of them and put them together into one of these frameworks or systems we're talking about, and then follow through and see what happens. Test
Give yourself a chance to learn it.
There's a lot to do.
It can be hard to, like you're talking about slow sliding and having a bit of patience. If you're also in a zone of, like if you're in a game plan of, I'm going to cover a bunch of water today.
Yeah.
And then you have to, like you can cover water, but then the presentation itself has to be deliberate and slow. Like it's really hard to sometimes turn one on and turn the other one off.
I know.
You end up slow, fast sliding off the bank to get to the next bank.
Right.
So it's not easy. Yeah.
Our friend Deli was on Jason Shemchuk's podcast called Wade Out There.
Right on.
And they were talking about covering water, and we talk about something we call full coverage versus cherry picking, cover all the river or just pick the best spots. Deli's well known for covering water fast. I mean, people hear him talk about that on our podcast all the time. faster than all of us, right?
Yep.
And on that podcast, he said, well, I have something I call full coverage fast.
That's a good description.
It is. And
That
I
is what you
understood it.
do.
And he did go on to talk a little more about it. And I was like, that is deli. Because Jason was saying, well, how do you know, how do you determine so quickly in the morning, like right after first light to, oh, you know what? They're eating in shallow riffles.
Yeah.
It was a good discussion. You should go check out that podcast too. Deli did a nice job.
Full coverage fast.
Full coverage fast. And really, honestly, that's why I bring it up, because when I'm streamer fishing, that's often what I'm doing. And now I have a name for it. Thanks, Deli. I am often trying to cover a lot of the river and do it fast. And like you say, it can be hard if I'm trying to do a slow presentation and yet keep my feet moving fast, but my arm and
counterintuitive.
Stripping hand maybe not going so fast. You got to keep covering water. That might be one of the main points.
Yeah.
We've mentioned it. I'll reiterate it. Streamer fishing must be a fast coverage kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot expect to throw 10 presentations over to that log and have meat on the 11th time.
Yeah.
You can give me a story about when it did work for your buddy on his 12th time.
Right, of course.
Because that's fishing. But you are going to do so much better by throwing 2 shots to that log, making one a slow slide and the other a fast jerk strip.
Right.
And then moving on. It's almost like we're going on a hike through the water.
Nice.
You got to move.
That's cool.
I'm almost constantly moving. I am casting while I'm moving. I've heard people say that you shouldn't be casting when you're moving. I think that's bullshit. Yeah. You have to cover water. And you can do it when you're casting. You almost have to with streamers. I think to really approach the water, you got to find the fish that are willing to move to that streamer.
Yeah.
Of course, every presentation that we've talked about has its own nuances. And some of those slower presentations, especially like the crossover, we've all been playing with a lot more recently.
Sure.
I'm not covering quite as fast, but I told you this in the crossover podcast, I do find myself now realizing, okay, I used to do the crossover too slow. I mean, my coverage of water was too slow because my presentation was. Anyway, you gotta know what you're doing and stick to the plan.
That's a good point. The nuances there. It makes me think about the nuances of the river too that you're fishing. Like certain rivers may dictate or could dictate the style of streamer retrieve or type of streamer you're gonna fish. Like if you're fishing big water that you need to break down in certain ways or cover in a different speed or effectiveness is gonna look different than if you're fishing a small freestoner or something that you're going to pick apart a little more meticulously. What do you think about that?
Well, I think every river is going to call to you to do different things in general. Big river that I've never been to before, and I really don't know where the trout are sitting.
Yeah, good call.
And maybe I just need to develop some confidence, even just by seeing fish and pulling them out of some spots.
Yeah.
Even if they don't eat. Yeah, that's what I tend to do on big rivers is I'm not going to do a crossover technique on big rivers. I'm probably not going to do speed leads and lane changes. I might swing. We talked about that in the swinging podcast.
Just cover a ton.
Right. And if it's a big river, I'm going to probably wade downstream. Now, you don't have to cast downstream because you're wading downstream, but it's more comfortable. And your body wants to do it. So sometimes I'll just surrender to that and see what I can pull off of some structure just to give me some confidence. And then, too, I might just use that big river water to help push me downstream, and I might still do slow slides or whatever.
Yeah, cool.
On big rivers, I really try to have a plan every 15 or 20 minutes. Try this, 20 minutes later. Try that, 20 minutes later. And it's almost always some kind of fast coverage thing.
Let me ask you about this then, and it's a little bit of the same. The 15-minute, 20-minute thing, I don't know, over 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
Sloop was telling me about the 15-minute rule.
Yeah.
That you guys used to have back in the day.
Talked about that a lot.
You know what? If they're not eating in the first 15 minutes on the streamer, they're probably not on it. And you know what? If they're eating nymphs, then you should probably just stick with the nymphs.
Yeah.
How much of that, 15-minute rule? I mean, obviously now we're talking about a dedicated approach and deciding you're going to do something for the day. But let's just say it's a regular day of fishing and, you're going to start off with streamers in the morning or something.
Yeah.
How much of that is still running in the background?
It depends on what your goals are, first of all.
Catch as many fish as you can. That's your goal.
Well, then Pat, OG trout pitting buddy Pat Burke would
Legacy.
definitely say that like the best way to ruin your day is to take off that nymph. He used to say the best way to ruin your day is to fish a dry fly. Sincerely, he didn't really mean it. Like we all love fishing dry flies, but it's going to slow you down as far as the fish count. Yeah. And streamers are usually going to slow you down as far as the fish count. So 15, 20-minute streamer rule, sloops rule. And that's been my rule for a long time. If my goal is to catch fish in the river from the river, then if I don't get any response in 20 minutes, I'm probably going to go back to nymphs
in
or dry
good water
flies.
where you should have
Right.
if you were gonna.
Good point. Right. It has to be a fair 20 minutes. And I'm telling you, man, within that 20 minutes, I'm going to try not everything. Obviously, you can't try everything in 20 minutes. But I'm going to try at least 2 or 3 flies. I bet you one's flashy and one's not. One's big and one's small. And I'm also going to try probably 2 or 3 of the presentations that we talked about, and you have to give them a fair chance down low in the strike zone. You got to give them a fair chance on some fast, twitchy stuff. Yeah. But if nothing, I mean, especially too, if I can see the streamer and I didn't even get a roll on the streamer from a trout or a drive-by. Yeah. If nothing, no hits, then I'm like, well, I could probably get it done better with a different fly style. What do you think about that? Are you the same way, or do you...
I've been pretty dedicated to that rule because the thing about our rivers, right? The density of trout. Like if there's a good spot, there's a fish in it. Yeah. If there's a good looking spot, or if there's a cluster of rocks, whatever it might be, there's going to be a fish in it. And like you said, if you can see your fly, and this is one time where I'm really going to be paying attention, especially is if I'm trying to find out if they're on at all. Yeah. Is to look for flashes and any responses. Yeah. And if the water's clear enough and whatever, you can do that.
You can see it.
And you're fishing through that good water where you 100% there's going to be a trout or 2 there and nothing's going on for a while. And you cycle through some of that stuff and you feel like you did a good job at it. Yeah. Then you got some answers and you can go try something different.
You make a good point about our fish density. Anywhere where you have like a Class A wild trout stream or whatever your state calls it, where there's a lot of wild trout in here.
Yeah, blue ribbon.
Yeah, blue ribbon's another term, right? So if there's unquestionably a high wild trout population, then there's trout in those spots. I mean, they're just in those sections, let's say.
Sure, right? Sure.
And as a guide, I get people, just yesterday, somebody got in touch and they said how they wanted me to teach them to find where these trout are holding. They're like, I've fished one of our local rivers a lot, and I struggle to find where the fish are. In what sections, he said, the fish were. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by section? And he said, well, like if I should park here or park down there, like a mile down below. I'm like, whoa, no, there's fish everywhere. I promise you, like there's fish everywhere. Are they behind every rock? No, because they might be over on the bank.
Sure.
Are they in that deep undercut? Maybe not. They might be feeding up actually in the shallow riffle. Is it wintertime? They might not be in that shallow riffle. The point being, you're trying to find where they're feeding, but I promise you, is what I told them, there are fish everywhere in those sections. They are inhabitants of that piece of water. And then they'll go and, find the place that's most conducive to actually feeding if they want to feed.
Right on.
Hey, I want to point out that blending all of these presentation styles is normal, natural, expected. Like, what are we on? Episode 10 here, and we're kind of wrapping things up. But throughout these 9 episodes, we've talked about all of these presentation styles, and we expect to mix them up. Like, it is very rare for me to actually go out there and say, I'm just going to glide my fly downstream and then do it for an hour. I don't know. Not just rare. I never do it, right? Yeah. And so we talked last week about the tight line dance, kind of incorporating everything, but it's about being able to see your fly, and that we're doing it on this tight line and we have this full control. Yep. But we're trying to bring all of those presentations into it. I've had a lot of comments about the jerk strip coming to me, and people say, well, this is the jerk strip. Well, okay. But we're using the jerk strip to just move the fly and then strip in the slack. Move the fly, strip in the slack. And we can do it a bunch of different ways. Anyway, the variety that's available to us with all this stuff shouldn't be missed. And we should mix all of this stuff together. Again, come up with your own presentations that very well might suit the moment, unlike anything we've ever described, that we've even come close to describing here.
Absolutely.
For me, excellent polarized lenses are a critical piece of gear every day that I'm on the water.
Tajima Direct has changed what I see in the river. Tajima Direct offers top-tier lens replacement services with the best polarized lens technology on the market. They offer both prescription and non-prescription lenses, so you can upgrade the lenses in your favorite frames with purpose-built lens tints that are specifically developed for fly fishing. Check out my 100-day gear review article on the Troutbitten website. Tajima's patented technology cuts glare and enhances clarity like no other lens that I've worn. I especially love their low-light specific yellow-green 40 polarized lens, which is perfect for early mornings, late evenings, and the cloudy days that we all enjoy so much. Tajima Direct offers excellent service and the best lenses on the market, along with much better pricing than your local eye doctor can offer. Clear vision and more detail with less strain so you can see more fish. That's what Tajima Direct delivers. Visit tajima-direct.com. That's TAJIMA-direct.com. Upgrade your lenses and see what you've been missing. For over a decade, Smith Creek has designed and built outstanding gear for the serious angler. Smith Creek's net holster is the perfect solution to hold your favorite net. I've been using mine every day on the water for over 9 years. Its ergonomic design helps you draw your net quickly when you need it, while keeping your net firmly in place and out of the way when you don't. Made from rugged materials and hand-assembled, Smith Creek's net holster is built to last. All Smith Creek gear is backed by their outstanding customer service no matter where or when you bought it. To stay up to date on their latest specials, follow Smith Creek on Instagram at SmithCreekNZ. Quality you can depend on from a brand you can trust. Smith Creek.
If you spend much time streamer fishing, you're going to find some days you're getting a lot of acknowledgments or drive-bys or hits, but not committals or eats. And maybe we should talk about...
No, that never happens. What are you talking about?
Maybe we should talk about for those days where it just seems like the fish won't go all the way for the fly, or you can't seal the deal and hook up. You know, what stuff can we change to help with that?
That's funny. I just brought up Pat Burke, and once again, I remember he and I were kind of in a streamer phase at the same time, and both of us were just like in his garage with a beer, sitting on 5-gallon buckets, just talking about it. Like, what can we do? Like,
hey,
there's
man,
got to be something. And a lot of people will just say that's the way streamer fishing is, but we're like, forget that. Like, there's got to be something or a set of things we can do to get more commitment, and we don't want to accept it. They don't want to accept it. Like 60% of the time, they don't actually eat it. We never came up with anything, Austin.
Well, I'm sure you had a couple ideas.
Nah,
A few theories.
Right, theories, and some things that do improve, right? You get a higher percentage. Oh my gosh, nobody's ever going to get like 80%, 90% commitment, maybe on the best day ever, but
yeah.
I don't think there's any streamer angler out there that could honestly tell you, like, oh yeah, 90% of the time they find the net, man. I get them. I think it's fair to acknowledge that streamer fishing is inherently like that, where they go after what is even a 1.5-inch fly is still a bigger food for them.
Sure.
In some ways, it really is. It's a bigger food form. It's bigger than most of what trout eat. And with that bigger food form comes more things for them to reject. Yes. We're moving the streamer, so it is more unpredictable, even when we're doing semi-predictable things with it. There's just more for them to question. There's more for them to try to, get on a pattern. We're asking more of the trout because we're asking them to move, unless you put it right on his nose. It's different, man. We're not just dead drifting things.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental difference. So I just think because of that, you're always going to have more refusals. And I'm dancing around the question, which is how do you get them really to commit more? I'd say there's a few things that I'd recommend, but nothing's a guarantee, right? Smaller patterns. They're going to refuse a 5-inch streamer a lot more than they're going to refuse a 2-inch streamer. That's a fact. Less movement. Ask them not to run all the way across the river, but just just swim 2 feet or 2 inches. Try putting it right on their nose and just doing the slightest little twitch when it's right where it's supposed to be, or a head flip. And then sometimes less flash. We talked about flash a minute ago.
Nice. Yeah.
And I think flash turns them off a lot of times.
Yeah.
Sometimes it turns them on.
Sure.
But I think flash is a very attractive thing. and sometimes it's too attractive. And I think they go, whoa, I was looking at that, but whoa, it's too much. That's why I like a little bit of flash and not overdone.
Yeah.
Sometimes. What are your tricks? Yeah.
Two things. I think about this a lot when it comes back to the flash topic, just to hit on it again.
Yeah.
I think a lot about what other fishermen are using. And I feel like a lot of flies that people are tying or buying, especially streamers, like all have a bunch of flash in them. And it's hard to like go into a fly shop, into the fly bin and try to pick out streamers that don't have flash in them. And so in my mind, I'm trying to show the trout something that maybe they're not seeing as often. I mean, maybe an overplayed fly. But I'm curious about this too. I think the retrieve of the fly greatly can change the hookup ratio. So if I'm stripping fast off the bank, like you said, and asking the fish to make a lot of movements,
okay, like
they have a very fine window of when they make a decision, either to eat it or not to eat it. And then they have to be a very, it has to be a very agile moment for them to be successful in that, in order for them not to miss it. If there's a fair amount of erratic movements and it's moving fast and all this and that, that's an easy way to get a lot of drive-bys and misses. And maybe that's what they want that day, but maybe they'll also eat something different. So when I fish lower and slower, or just when I fish slower or more predictable, or maybe I'm jigging or some slight animations within the crossover or tight line dance, I feel like because I have better contact and a little bit better awareness and there's not so much line out maybe, that I'm often hooking up with fish much more consistently. I don't have a lot of drive-bys and like chases when I'm just crossovering or tight line dancing, because I feel like the fish are more stationary and they just go up and get it and don't do a full-on attack. Like all of a sudden my line's tight and I got him. That's how it feels more often than just getting slammed. Like it's rarely feeling like I'm getting slammed by the fish. It's just, oh, there he is. And that's when it works best for me.
Almost hooked themselves. So there's a lot to be said about, whether a trout is attacking your fly as the predatory instinct that Gallup talks about so much.
Yeah. Yeah, right on.
And they're trying to chase it down. Well, they're trying to chase it away.
Yep.
And then maybe they decide, I'm going to eat it too. You're going to get a lot more refusals when they're in that mood. And when you do kind of what you were just saying, and I'm full agreement, like with the crossover, I get the most commitment. I might get up to like 75, 80% commitment. I think, or hookup ratio, let's just say, with that crossover. In a smaller fly, once again, you're kind of saying similar things to maybe is what I did, is smaller fly and less movement.
Yeah.
More commitment.
Right. Yeah.
Is that as fun? You know what I mean?
Right. And it depends if that's what they want that day. If they want to chase stuff and, that's all you got, then that's what you got to try to make happen. But maybe they'll do something different for you. What about rivers that are known for big trout?
What do you mean?
So do you approach them any differently than just let's say a Class A or a blue ribbon stream that has a chance for a big trout, but not something expected?
When I know big trout are around, I want to fish a big fly, and not all the time. Certainly not all the time. But whatever, right? Like big flies for big trout, that whole thing gets in my brain. And I'm like, well, maybe he wouldn't move for a 1.5 inch fly.
Yeah.
And I suppose he wouldn't move. But the idea, some of our presentations is we're going to take it right to him. I get a little antsy. And I'm like, well, I said fun a minute ago, right? And there's nothing more fun than putting it on the bank, bang at 45 degrees up and across, put it on the bank real close to it, and then jerk, strip, and each jerk is moving the fly about a foot, and bam, bam, bam. I love that. That's my favorite presentation. Just cross current stuff. I'll occasionally mix in a head flip at the end, maybe a little give and take there at the bottom when the current's against it and all that, and then pick it up, do it again, keep moving. I probably took 2 steps during that presentation too, and I'm going upstream or downstream. That's my favorite thing to do, I guess, on big trout water.
Yeah,
and I feel like if you cover enough water, you're going to get your shots.
Nice.
I think you asked the question, and I'm trying to answer it honestly. I think I do that because it's the most fun for me. I don't know that it's actually the best tactic.
Sure.
If you said I'd give you $1 million today if you went and you caught one of those big trout, I might very well nymph it with something that was an inch and a half long.
Yeah, that's fair.
So what do you think? You kind of have an answer lined up, don't you? You ask a question so that you could give the answer.
No. I do have some thoughts, though, because I'm a thinking man.
I can tell. You're leaning up to the mic. You're ready to say, well, Dom, I have something.
Anything else, Austin? Yes.
No, we're not there. We're close, though.
No, when I think about big trout rivers, and my perspective is going to be, skewed to my experiences, but oftentimes some of these rivers might have a lower population of fish, or you might be in a marginal water area where you're really just trying to locate a fish for the day.
Yeah.
So I do agree with like the idea of covering a ton of water, but like I'm probably not going to cover every bit of that ton of water. I'm gonna do a lot of cherry picking, and we've talked about in previous tactics podcasts that making that first cast the best one. Where if I know I'm searching for one big fish, I want to make sure that each place I approach with a purpose of believing that there's a big trout possibly lying there, that the first cast in there is the very best presentation for what I want to do. And fishing incredibly intentional, and being okay with passing up a lot of the B and C water in between the best looking streamer water. Like I'll just skip it. Get to where you think the trout will be, where the best trout will choose to be, and then throw your best cast at it.
Wow, I like it.
And then get out of there and get to the next spot.
That's good.
That's been how I've found what success I've had.
I like that a lot. That is another case where discipline matters a lot.
Yeah.
It's so easy to say, man, that bee water is pretty dang good though. And I don't have anything figured out yet, you know, so I'm maybe I should, test that. That's cool. Being very disciplined about cherry picking your prime water.
Yeah.
That's neat. Hey, I got something here. What about the types of bait fish in your waters? We've gotten a couple questions about this. And even last week, I think it was Frank was asking us about, leeches and crayfish.
Yeah.
And of course, we have black-nosed dace, and we have sculpins and small trout. And all the stuff. All the things trout can eat. Do you think it matters much, like what's really in your river? I've heard plenty of people say, like, you got to know what's in the river, and you need to match the hatch, so to speak, or match the food form with your streamer. And we pay a lot of attention to that, of course, on a dry fly, because we can see it all. I think that's why everybody cares so much about it.
Yeah.
We pay some attention to that on a nymph, and I know plenty of people really care about that on a streamer as well. What about you?
I care about it when the conditions are extreme. So,
what do you mean by extreme?
Like I used to fish a river down south that had almost no bug life in it. And there was a ton of bait fish and sculpins. So if you went and you nymphed, you could have success, but that wasn't very much of like a realistic expectation of the trout. But you could nymph larger objects, like a large stonefly, and still get across with something that could be a crayfish. You could dead drift a sculpin and get the same effect. So in those scenarios, I'm going to think about it. But if I'm fishing my regular waters, which has a large variance of just about any swimming or living creature,
I know,
I don't think about it a whole lot. I think more about the presentation of the fly itself. Now, again, we always joke that, I could tie you a fly, that's not going to catch a fish. So there's limitations to all that. But if you have somewhat realistic, or not realistic, but general patterns that aren't too offensive, and you present them well, for most of the times, that's all you need, in my opinion.
That's a good answer. And it does matter so much what your water is. We can't tell everybody what to do because we're not fishing everywhere you are. You said how in our waters, there's kind of everything. We definitely have crayfish, sculpins, black-nosed dace, small trout. What am I missing there?
Fall fish, suckers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the juvenile forms of all of those fish. We have them. We kind of have it all. So I have flies in my box that look a lot like everything we just said. And then I'll move them in different ways. Like a sculpin's not going to move as fast as a black-nosed dace.
Yeah, right on.
I mean, are you ever thinking like I have a sculpin on, so I have to move it like a sculpin? So I'm not going to put it in the middle of the I wouldn't do a tight. Maybe we shouldn't do a tight line dance with the sculpin imitation. Yeah, but it works.
No, I think about I have one fly on. I'm
Yeah.
going to fish it like it's a sculpin right now. And then
Mhm.
on the next cast with the same fly, I'm going to fish it like it's a black nose dace.
Yeah.
Pattern doesn't change.
I heard on the Gallup podcast, let me acknowledge, like, I've talked a lot about Gallup
Yeah.
on this streamer
Yeah,
presentations.
rightfully so.
Yeah, I think rightfully so. And I like to give credit where I learn things. And his podcast, I think it's Tuesdays they put it out, video podcast. It makes it to the audio form.
Yeah.
And I heard them saying, kind of discussing this about how a zoo cougar is pretty much a sculpin imitation, but you can put it right in the middle of the water column and do things that a sculpin is never going to do, and trout eat it.
Right.
Yeah, so how much is a trout really looking for a sculpin to do sculpin-y things? Or are they just eating something that gets their attention?
Yeah.
That goes back to a lot of how we're fishing it.
I do buy like the idea of the silhouette or the shape of the fly being something that's realistic. Like the sculpin, they always talk about the large pectoral fins, the big fat head, and the narrowing body. Like, I think that's a good thing to imitate. And I will do that in many flies. But I'm not only going to fish it like that's what it is. If that makes sense.
Yeah. There's something to be said too a trout isn't thinking necessarily. It's not going, well, hey, that's a sculpin form, but it's up in the middle of the column, and I'm not going to eat that.
Yeah.
But then on dry flies, for example, we get real picky because the trout do about how that dry fly is drifting. I mean, is it in the surface film or is it above it? If it's a spinner, it better be right in the surface film. We talk about emergers and even dancing caddis and stuff. So all of that does seem to matter. And are the trout thinking, oh, that's a dancing caddis, but this is a spinner fall?
Right.
I don't know if he's thinking.
Yeah.
But they certainly respond with some instinct to, nope, not eating that, or yep, gonna eat that.
Yep.
And of course, they do the same thing with a streamer.
Yeah, I mean, heck, who knows how much of that's going on that you don't see. I mean, the dry fly is such a visual experience that you notice if you're not getting takes or you're getting refusals a lot more.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about.
It is fun to think about. All you can really do is test stuff, fish a lot.
Yeah, collect that experience.
Yeah, it's experience. You have to be on the water with an open mind. Try all of this stuff that your buddies are trying, put together your own things, your own patterns, and then test without bias. Fish hard.
Yeah, man.
And find your own way. I think with streamers, there is more room for personality or being an individual and having your own kind of creativity than with dry flies or nymphs or wets. I really do. There's so many different ways to move that streamer. And you can figure it out, especially day to day. You can really dial something in that your buddy downstream isn't going to be able to do it. Or maybe he's doing it and you aren't.
Right.
Like when you
stuff.
and I fish together, Austin, and I'm catching them, and you're like, what's Dom doing?
He's got his net out. And he keeps it out to make sure I see it. Sometimes I think he just takes it out.
This one's really big. Come help me net it.
And I try to not acknowledge you because I don't want you to feel good about yourself. Like, no.
Right. Keep your back turned.
If I don't see it, his numbers are lower.
I release the fish, and then I'm like dipping the net to keep it wet, and then I'm like, I'm about to put it away.
Slow motion.
Austin won't look.
Is he looking?
He won't look. Let me dip the net again, get it wet. He still won't look. Text Austin.
Maybe I make a big splash.
Just released one up here.
Really get him dialed in.
With my strained voice.
Got the strained voice going on.
They were eating a jerk strip.
Yep.
Austin,
Yep.
for season 14, streamer presentation series, is there anything else, my friend?
Yeah, this right here.
What's that? Grip strength. What are
Yeah.
you doing?
Oh, yeah. I keep this at my desk, and I do grip exercises during the
You have one of those grip tool things
Makes you-
on a spring.
Yeah, this one only
What do you-
goes up to 50 pounds.
All right. In Austin's dominant hand, which is his left hand, he has a 50-pound, what do you call that?
Yeah, just a gripper.
He's just going to call it a gripper.
Yeah.
And he's flexing it.
I got to
What
set.
the heck is the point of that? How does that
What do
wrap
you
up
mean?
season 14?
I just
What are we doing?
want to let you know I was working out. Let you know that I'm better than you.
I didn't know you were better than me.
That's right. Oh,
Arm wrestling next time on a tailgate.
Oh,
Okay?
that sounds painful. No, man, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think that was a fun conversation, and I think the point that you ended on there of mixing stuff together and getting some personality in it, you're going to decide and you're going to learn what things give you confidence and what things don't, both in retrievals, fly styles, materials, rigging, all that stuff. And the only way to figure it out is to go out there and do it. So do it.
Yeah, well, you said too, like leaving the other flies, the other options at home.
Yeah, there you go.
And I know you've spent months, seasons, maybe years, just mostly fishing streamers, and I have done the same thing. You know, we all go through our phases.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a good way to do it.
It's a good time too, you know, like, or at least to be interested in something and be in a phase at the same time we're talking about it makes it more interesting too, because you're living it day by day.
Yeah, and go find friends that have those same interests or at least willing to entertain you, or marry the right person who will listen to you talking about streamers.
Yep. That's definitely a special person.
All right. There it is. Season 14, the 10-part Troutbitten streamer presentation series, Volume 1. Okay, I'm kidding about Volume 1, but in all honesty, there's a lot more to dig into with streamers that we didn't cover. Our focus throughout this series has been how do we want to move the fly? What are the animations that might suit the conditions, match the moment, and sell the trout? Because streamer fishing is a wholly different discipline from fishing dry flies or nymphs. Even a small streamer is a larger food form, and it's our job to make that streamer look like the real thing. So lines, leaders, and flies, like that's up to you. And in many cases, you can perform the same animations with a variety of options. Choose a presentation and sell the trout. Cover water, get creative, and have fun out there. That's good streamer fishing. All right, we'll be back in a few weeks with the full crew format of the podcast, with all the Troutbitten guys and a new topic every week. We're looking forward to it. Thanks to everyone out there for your support. It means a lot. I hope you enjoyed this skills series as much as we did. One more time then. Austin Dando, friend of the fishes. Will you read us out?
All right, I will. Okay, so remember, just in case you forgot, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers.
I heard that.
The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,500 articles, videos, and podcasts with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and the tags too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, now featuring the Troutbitten Tip Series, Fly Fishing the Mono Rig, and the Troutbitten Fly Box, all in collaboration with Wilds Media.
Wilds.
You'll also find the fish and film videos and the new Riverside series all in their own playlists on the Troutbitten YouTubes. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a comment, because that really helps. Till next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, strip your meat, and find your life on the water.
What's that? We're never going to get Troutbitten on the Netflix channel if you keep saying stuff like that.
This is the Troutbitten Podcast, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swintoski.
No, it's not.
I'm the owner and author of troutbitten.com.
No, you're not.
All right, then.
That's Austin doing the intro. That's not cool.
.com.
Do I say calm?
Yeah, you Westerners.
Anyway. Austin, would you like to try the intro?
I already did.
You don't want to try it again?
Nope, think I nailed it.
All right.